Good evening. If we are to accomplish what is on the table tonight, we have a very large order, and you will have to cooperate and really understand everything that is said. This is not entertainment. This is not inspiration for your scrapbook. This is instruction. You will have to hear, really hear, and you will have to let go of arguing back inside your own head while I am speaking. If there is to be a healing, if there is to be freedom, you cannot split yourself into a listener and a debater. You cannot pick and choose. You cannot hold to your favorite technique and add a little of this on top. No, not if you want demonstration. You must consent to be taught. I know the burden you carried into this room. A world of methods, a shelf of remedies, the pressure of doing something about it and then doing it harder. The affirmations, the denials, the diets, the breathing, the tapping, sincere, earnest, exhausting. And when it doesn't work, the mind says, more of the same, stronger, faster, louder, and the heart grows tired while the calendar moves on. You have tried to push truth into a condition as if truth were a crowbar and the problem a stuck door. You have prayed as if God were a distant official, and your task was to fill out the form correctly and then phone again if he didn't answer. You have taken your stand against, and the very fact that you took a stand against testified that you believed in that which you resisted. Do you see? Your struggle has been the evidence of your belief in another power. Now, I am not here to ask you to fight better. I am not inviting you to a more refined technique to overcome what you fear. I am here to say, and I am going to say it plainly, you are not being asked to fight at all. You are being asked to cease granting power to what you fear. Healing in the infinite way is without force. It is not the application of a new power. It is not even the use of God as a power. It is the end of the two-power hypnosis. It is the quiet realization that God alone is power. And in that realized presence, the appearance cannot stand because it never had substance except the belief you lent it. That is our principle. This is a mathematical formula. You cannot get away from it. Demonstration is proportionate to consciousness, and consciousness recognizing one power admits no opponent to wrestle. Let me set our contract clearly. Tonight, and as we continue, we are going to do three things. First, we are going to uncover why force fails, why the pushing, pleading, and willpower exalt the very belief that binds you. Second, we are going to correct the mechanism, what I mean by dissolution, the evaporation of error belief in the realized presence of God, not the fixing of a thing by another thing. Third, we are going to tell you exactly what to do in the moment of fear, and then how to live each day so that you are not at the mercy of the world's belief in two powers. If that is not the help you want, if you came for how to move matter with mind, you will be disappointed. But if you came to rest in grace, then you are in the right place. Now, because I must shepherd you firmly, hear this. Never believe for a moment that you can bring forth any greater demonstration than your own state of consciousness, not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. If the mind is still arguing for a second power, whether it is a germ or a bank balance or a person, no number of words will suffice. Words will become noise. Prayer will become labor, and you will go home tired. But if, here and now, you begin to withhold the only fuel these apparitions ever had, your belief, then already the battle is over because there never was a battle. Be still and know that I am God. That is not poetry, it is instruction. Be still means cease granting activity to your churning mind. Know that I am means. Let the I that is God announce itself within you. Then you will see why we say, nothing is to be overcome, nothing is to be applied. Grace is to be realized. You may say, but the pain is loud, the account is due, the habit pulls. I know, and I am telling you as gently and as uncompromisingly as I can that the very loudness is the argument that wants your consent. It calls itself power, It wants you to fear it or run from it or fight it. Refuse all three. You are not asked to pretend it is pleasant. You are asked to withhold your agreement that it has authority. Sit down inside yourself. 1 minute, 1.25, 1.5 if you can bear it. Close the door of sensation and thought as best you can, and turn to the kingdom within. The kingdom of God is within you, not outside, not later. You sit. You do not push truth into a condition. You become quiet enough that truth can reveal itself. In that revelation, the belief that sustained the appearance breaks its own spell. That, and only that, is healing. So let us agree on our way of working together. We are not going to tell war stories to prove that our problems are real. You have had enough reality for a lifetime. We are not going to collect techniques. You have enough tools to build a prison. We are going to do something far simpler and far greater. We will substitute grace for power. Every time your thought runs to, how do I fix? You will correct it to, how do I rest and know? Every time you feel the impulse to strike at the appearance, you will recall 2 powers. No, 1 power, yes, and we will practice until that is no longer a sentence, but a state. And now let the assurance begin, even before the instruction unfolds. All is well, not because I say so, but because God is on the field. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. If you are willing, this hour will be different from other hours, because you will not leave with more to do. You will leave with less to believe. You will leave knowing what we will prove in detail as we go. That the appearance has lived on your consent, and in your silence it starves. That the strain has testified against you, and in your quiet it ends. Take no thought for your life, what ye shall eat, what ye shall drink, wherewithal ye shall be clothed. For your life is hid with Christ in God, and that life is the only power present. We begin here then with a solemn and joyous agreement. We will not fight. We will not feed the belief in 2 powers. We will listen. We will know. And as we proceed, I will show you why force fails, what dissolution is, how to stand in the instant of pressure without consenting, and how to start each day protected from the mesmerism of the world. If you will cooperate, if you will really understand everything that is said, the rest of the journey will not be uphill. It will be inward. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. Now we must face the basic hypnosis. Not tomorrow, now. If we are to move even 1 inch from strain to grace, we have to lay down the uncompromising premise that governs the whole of the infinite way. Either God alone is power, or you accept 2 powers, good and evil, and you will live in conflict. There is no third way. You cannot say God is all and then add a little but. You cannot sing hymns to omnipotence and then rush to prop up an opposite. The very rush gives you away. The very push is your confession. Force is the evidence of 2 power belief. Freedom begins the instant you withdraw power from the appearance. Let me say it as bluntly as love can say it. Every time you battle a condition, you silently admit that it has power, law, intelligence, and presence. Every time you take your stand against a disease, against a person, against a bank balance, against a habit, you are on your knees before it, acknowledging, you are someone, you are something, I must do something about you. And then you wonder why the battle goes on. It goes on because you have given it breath. You have given it your worship. Oh, not with candles and incense, no. With fear, with argument, with treatments hurled like stones, with quotations used like whips. In the moment of force, you are a 2-power believer. You cannot get away from this. Now we call that error. Not the disease, not the bill, not the person, not the climate, not the atom, not the star. Error is not a thing. Error is not an entity. Error is not a power. Error is only a belief in a power apart from God. Remember that, and you have the key that opens every door in this teaching. The entire fabric of human suffering hangs upon one thread: the universal belief in two powers, not your private belief only. We were born into that mind which says good and evil, health and disease, abundance and lack, peace and war have separate competing laws. We breathed that air, we were educated in it, and then we bring it into our spiritual work and say, God is all power, but we treat as if there were another. I will not indulge that double talk. You must not either if you want demonstration. To what do we give power? Be honest with yourself. Do you give it to what you can see, hear, taste, touch, and smell? Do you give it to chemicals, to calories, to bank ledgers, to news bulletins, to weather, to time? If you do, then you are standing in the world belief. You are saying there are many powers, but hear me. Nothing that you can see, hear, taste, touch, or smell is power. All power is invisible. All power is God. If you could touch it, measure it, photograph it, it would be an effect, never the cause, never the power. Ask yourself, why do you strain? Why do you hurry? Why do you treat twice and 3 times and 4 in an hour? Because you fear a power. Because you believe there is a law operating against you, and the very intensity with which you labor is your unspoken creed. There is another cause at work here, and I must bring a stronger one to bear. No, not in the infinite way, not if you would be free. Not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit, saith the Lord. That is not a charming line from an old book. That is the cancellation of two-power thinking. That is the voice that says, cease opposing, realize presence. Do you see what happens when you oppose? You bind yourself to the opposite you have created. You and the problem are now two dancers, hand in hand, turning and turning. If the music speeds up, you speed up. If it slows, you slow. Resist not evil did not mean become a doormat. It meant do not accept it as power enough to deserve your resistance. Do not dignify it with combat. Do not stabilize it in your experience by grappling with it. Thou couldst have no power over me, said the master to Pilate, except it were given thee from above. That was not bravado. That was law. That was one power consciousness standing before the machinery of a two-power world and refusing its suggestion. Now someone is thinking, but surely I must do something. Surely I cannot just sit while evil advances. Yes, you must do something. You must do the one thing that heals. You must withdraw the only life the appearance ever had, your belief. You must stop feeding it your attention as power, your fear as law, your words as cement. You must let it starve in your silence. You do not need to strengthen yourself to fight a shadow. You need to turn on the light. You do not need to push the darkness out of the room with your hands. You need to realize light. Error has no self-sustained presence. It lives on your consent. It borrows its isness from your acceptance. It is a parasite upon your faith in a second power. Withdraw that and watch how quickly the grand monster becomes a paper puppet. This is not theory. This is a mathematical formula. You cannot get away from it. As your consciousness recognizes one power and denies all appearance power, the effects in your experience will correspond. As your consciousness toys with two powers, your experience will report conflict. You cannot demonstrate freedom while you secretly worship the problem as power. You cannot sing God is all in the meeting and then go home and look up symptoms as if they wrote the law of your life. You cannot call a pill power and then wonder why prayer feels weak. You cannot treat God as a stronger force among forces and come out with peace. God is not a bigger stick to beat error. God is the only, and in the only, there is nothing to beat. Let me comfort you and correct you at once. Comfort, you have not failed because you are weak. You have failed where you have failed because you have been faithful to a false premise. You were devout in your two-power religion, and it paid you in kind. Correction. Give it up now. Give up the idea that your salvation lies in a tug-of-war with conditions. Give up the idea that truth must be applied to things. Give up the idea that God must be brought down upon a headache or up against a bank account. My only function as practitioner, as student, as man or woman of God is realization. God alone is power. Error is not power. In the realized presence, the belief evaporates. The appearance dissolves of its own nothingness. Nothing is applied to it. Nothing fights it. It cannot endure. The light that reveals it was never substance. You will ask, but what about this pain now? I will not insult you with sentimentality. Pain, fear, need, they come with loud voices, and their purpose is singular, to extract your consent, to get you to say, yes, you are power. Refuse the argument. Do not push it down. Do not fight it up. Refuse it. Say within yourself, even if your lips tremble, there are not two powers. God alone is power. Then be still. That is not passivity. That is obedience to principle. Be still and know that I am God. Be still does not mean be lazy. It means cease mental and emotional activity that feeds the second power. Know does not mean think. It means let the I that is God announce itself in you. When it does, even as a breath, a release, and all is well, you will feel the severing of the cord that tied you to the dance. The appearance may shout once more, but you will know it for what it is, a beggar at the door of your belief, refused. Understand then that our way is not an attack. It is an uncovering. It is not force. It is realization. It is not argument. It is revelation. When you withdraw power from the appearance, you are not leaving yourself naked before a storm. You are stepping into the one shelter that is the realized presence. The kingdom of God is within you. That is not geography, that is causation. The law of your life is not outside, not in the clinic, not in Wall Street, not in the weatherman, not in the calendar. The law of your life is the state of your consciousness. And when your consciousness stands in one power, all that comes within its orbit must conform. We will take that up next, because it is inevitable. If there is only one power, then demonstration is not a matter of wrestling with forms, but of rising in consciousness. This is a mathematical formula. The degree of the works is directly proportionate to the degree of realized oneness. But do not run ahead. Sit with this one truth until it settles. Force is the evidence of two-power belief. Freedom begins the instant you withdraw power from the appearance. Do that now in small ways, in great, and you will feel the first cool wind of grace, moving where heat and hurry once were. All is well, not by conquest, but because there is no opponent to God. I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father within me, he doeth the works. Let that be your creed in this hour, and you will already be standing on new ground. Now let us put numbers to it, not arithmetic numbers, but law. This is a mathematical formula. You cannot get away from it. The degree of the works you do is directly proportionate to the state of consciousness you attain. If your consciousness is anchored in two powers, your demonstration will wobble, sometimes better, sometimes worse, sometimes yes, sometimes no. If your consciousness rests in one power, God alone as cause, law, presence, substance, your demonstration will be sure in that degree. Not because you have found a stronger lever, not because you have learned a clever technique, but because law is law and consciousness is the only arena in which life is ever lived. Please do not fight this. You cannot bring forth any greater demonstration than your state of consciousness will permit. Not ever. Not by longer words, not by louder words, not by more frequent words. Sincerity, oh, I honor it. But sincerity cannot substitute for realization any more than a sincere novice at the piano can render a concerto by sincerity alone. You may sit at the keys earnestly. You may strike them harder. You may repeat the score 10, 20, 30 times. And still what comes forth can be no more than the music you embody. Likewise, you can mouth scripture. You can hurl affirmations. You can deny and deny and deny. And still the works will rise only to the altitude of your realized oneness. This is not punishment. This is mercy, because it sets you free from superstition. It exposes why strained treatment fails and quiet realization succeeds. Do not mistake me. Words have a place. They are like scaffolding while the inner temple is taking form. But when you begin to lean on the scaffolding as if it were the temple, you are attempting to bypass consciousness and manipulate effect. Techniques are often little more than the human attempt to outwit law. We think if we can arrange the right syllables, the right breath, the right hour of the night, the right crystal, the right oil, yes, I know, then we can coax God into our condition and push matter into alignment. No, you cannot. You cannot start at the circumference and twist it into a center. Effect will change when cause is realized, and cause is God known. Not God talked about, not God advertised to the problem, but God consciously realized where you are. Now, I am going to be very plain, because you must have this. When one student reports that a condition vanished at a word, and another reports that the same condition lingers through 10 treatments, what is the difference? Do not insult either one of them by saying, "He had more faith," or "She used a stronger formula." No, the difference is the altitude of consciousness invested in the word. The same sentence, "God alone is power," uttered from two-power fear, will be a rubber sword. The same sentence uttered from realized presence will part the sea. "I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father within me, he doeth the works." There you have it. The works are proportionate to the degree to which the Father within is a living presence and not a theory you are trying to rent for the hour. Picture it this way. At sea level, fog is dense and objects loom menacingly close. You can hurry, you can wave your hands. You can beat the air with a stick to move the fog aside. You will grow tired and the fog will smirk. Rise. Rise a few hundred feet and you see the same landscape without the menace. Rise a few thousand and the fog is a ribbon of white far below, harmless, without voice. Do you see? You did not fix the fog. You did not push it back by might. You rose, and rising changed the appearance by proportion. The altitude of your realized consciousness determines how conditions appear, threat or nothing in particular. You do not rise by effort against conditions. You rise by the altitude of realized consciousness. Those who have worked in hospitals know of the experiments. A hypodermic of hot water given under the belief it is morphine, and the pain stops. A few drops of harmless liquid believed to be a potent remedy, and symptoms subside. What is being measured? Not chemistry, belief. And if belief, then consciousness. The infinite way does not borrow its mechanism from placebo. It reveals the truth to which placebo bears witness. It is the state of thought that governs experience. But here is the correction. We are not interested in positive human belief. We are concerned with the end of belief in two powers, through the realization of God as the only. That realization is not human opinion. It is the Word uttering itself within. And as that realization dawns, the appearance dissolves of its own nothingness, not because we have applied a stronger counter-belief, but because error cannot survive the presence. So if you ask me for a larger demonstration, I cannot give you a ritual. I can only say, develop the consciousness, unfold the realization, spend your devotion not on dressing up effects, but on knowing the cause. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. Added, not wrestled for. Added, not negotiated with. You do not change matter, body, person, or circumstance. Those are the shadows on the wall. You turn and face the light itself, until the light is not an article of your creed, but the living God announcing himself within you. Then the shadows on the wall change of their own accord, in exact proportion to the light realized. Never believe for a moment that your problem requires a special technique. Whether it is physical, mental, moral, or financial, whether it wears the face of pain, of fear, of loss, of loneliness, it is all the same because the law is all the same. Consciousness determines demonstration. One power realized ends conflict. Two powers believed in perpetuate it. If you accept this mathematical formula, you will save yourself years of running in circles. You will stop searching for the master key in someone else's pocket. You will stop feeling cheated when a sentence that worked yesterday seems empty today. The measure is not the sentence. The measure is the consciousness in which it is known. How, then, do we proceed? By the only way that honors the law. We make our aim realization. My only function is realization. I have no business applying truth to a sick organ or to a barren checkbook. I have no business pleading for God to be God where God already is. I have one business: to sit, to be still, to know until the I that is God announces itself in me. When that moment comes, perhaps as nothing more than a deep breath, a soft inner word, an assurance that all is well. God is on the field. The proportion is set. The scales tip. The belief that propped up the appearance loses its footing, and the works follow as mathematical certainty, not as magic. You will notice what this does to prayer. It strips it of bargaining. It strips it of petition. It strips it of the desperate attempt to move an external deity to come and help a frightened mortal. Prayer becomes listening. Prayer becomes the holy receptivity in which truth utters itself. First, yes, we may declare the truth, one power, no other, to center ourselves away from the world's noise. Then we obey the law, we are still, and we know. We listen, we let the presence reveal itself and set the proportion. If nothing comes, we do not manufacture a feeling. We do not add adjectives to our declaration to make it sound stronger. We return again to quietness and confidence, for in quietness and confidence shall be your strength. This, beloved, is the mercy of inevitability. You are spared the terror of caprice. God is not moody. Grace is not doled out to the favorites and withheld from the untrained. As certainly as water seeks its level, the works will mirror the level of realization. If your demonstration today seems small, do not lash yourself. Grow the consciousness, guard it, feed it with remembrance, one power, God alone, until it ceases to be a sentence and becomes an atmosphere. Then watch as everything in your orbit begins to conform. Do not try to raise the river by pushing on the surface with your hands. Open the spring in the hills, and the river must rise. Open the spring, realization, and effects will come up of themselves to meet it. And because I do not want you to be misled by the next gust of sensation, I must prepare you. Immediately after we accept this law, the world belief may whisper, but the body says, but the pain proves, but the circumstance insists. In our next step, we will unmask that whisper. We will see who knows the pain and why that knowing has been the very breath in the appearance's lungs. For tonight, take with you this irreducible thing. The works you want do not lie at the end of a longer rope of effort. They lie at the altitude of realized consciousness. Rise by stillness, by listening, by grace, and you will find that what you sought to change will have changed itself in the light of the one that never needed changing. Good? Now we are ready to turn the light right on the face of the whisper. I promised you we would unmask it. We will do it in the simplest way, so simple you will wonder how you ever missed it. Come down from the high talk and stand with me at the doorway on a cold evening. A draft moves across the hall. You or your mother or your grandmother say, Shut that door, you'll catch cold. Now, be very honest with me. Does the chest know that a draft is harmful? How would the chest know? Does the chest read thermometers? Does it understand the word draft in English or in any other language? No. No, it doesn't. The chest does not know the word. The chest does not interpret a breeze. What does know it? I know it. Aha. And that is the secret. Or take wet feet. You step in a puddle. Oh my, you'll get rheumatism. Really? Do the toes report to the joints? We were wet, begin inflammation. Does the cartilage keep a logbook of puddles? No, it doesn't. The body has no such education. It does not read almanacs. It does not consult old wives' tales. What knows it? I know it, and there is the door we must go through. Let us sit at a table. The waiter brings a plate. The menu says peanuts or gluten or lactose. Immediately, perhaps, there is fear. I cannot eat that. I am not dealing with diet, I am dealing with causation. Tell me, does the stomach know the label on the food? Does the organ read the menu? Does it decipher molecular charts? No, it doesn't. The stomach does not know names and labels. What knows it? I know it. The knowledge, accepted, feared, worshipped, becomes your law, not law in matter, acceptance in consciousness. Consider climate. In one country, they throw open the windows in winter and breathe with joy. In another, they sleep under a mountain of quilts, lest a breeze steal across the room. The same air, the same temperature, two entirely different experiences. Did the air change? Did the lungs change their nature as they crossed a border? Or did the belief, the acceptance, write two different stories out of one neutral circumstance? You see what I am after. We have to expose that the appearance has no authority of its own. It is an appearance dressed in the authority you lend it by belief. Now I will tighten the screw one more turn, not to hurt you, but to set you free. When pain shouts, you say, "My nerve is on fire." I ask you, does the nerve know the word pain? Does the nerve know time? It started at 2:15. Does it own a clock? Does it keep a calendar of weather changes? No, it doesn't. The nerve is a messenger. It is not a knower. What knows it? I know it. And in that I know, the belief is either granted or refused. The humanly accepted belief is the breath in the appearance's lungs. Withdraw the breath and the puppet hangs limp. You may say, but surely there are laws, physical laws, chemical laws. I do not debate that on their level. I simply ask you to notice their variability under belief. Physicians have watched it by the hour. A hypodermic of hot water injected under the belief that it is morphine and the pain eases. A bit of harmless sugar, believed to be a powerful sedative, and the patient sleeps. What was operating? Not morphine, not sugar, belief. Some of you have witnessed the reverse. A perfectly wholesome food taken in fear, and the reaction comes. A neutral pill announced as a stimulant, and the heart races. We are not building a religion of placebo. We are letting these humble facts testify to a higher law. The power is not in the substance. The so-called force in matter is the force of accepted belief. Now, if you will stay with me, do not run, do not argue. If you will let this sink in, you can be done with years of war against forms. I am not asking you to despise the body or to neglect wisdom. I am asking you to shift causation. Stop asking the chest if it knows a draft. Stop asking the stomach if it has read the label. Stop asking the nerve what the clock says. Ask the knower. Ask that I, which is conscious. And then notice this, the I that fears, the I that accepts the world's laws, the I that says, I am of purer eyes than to behold iniquity, and then gives in to it, that I is not the I that is God, that I is the universal human mind into which we were born, full of its two power beliefs, that I is the one you must refuse in order to come to the I that is God, the I am that says, I am the life, It is the spirit that quickeneth, the flesh profiteth nothing. There you have your scripture authority. The flesh, organs, climate, food, elements, profiteth nothing as cause. The spirit, realized, quickeneth. Let me press the question until it breaks the spell. If the chest does not know a draught, what gives a draught any voice? If the stomach does not interpret a label, what makes the label a law? If nerves do not own clocks, what makes a 2:15 the hour of agony? Only one thing, I know it, I grant it, I consent. And the instant of consent is the instant I am living under two powers. You will say, but I have experienced the result. Of course, a belief consistently accepted becomes experience. That is why you must not play with belief. That is why you must not talk truth and then sit down to read the latest bulletin of human power. As he thinketh in his heart, so is he, the scripture says. Not as he is nudged by matter. As he thinketh, consciousness writes the script your body reads. Now, here is the mercy. If belief could bind you, realization can loose you. If acceptance animated the appearance, non-acceptance, refusal starves it. Not by an opposite belief, not by positive thinking, not by a new set of slogans, but by the end of belief in two powers through the realization of one power. The appearance has no authority of its own. It has borrowed authority from your acceptance. It lives on your consent. Withdraw that consent quietly without a fight, and you will watch what seemed so solid grow thin. You will see it for what it is, a picture on the screen, not the light in the projector. Someone will say, but the pain is here. What do I do in this very moment? You do not argue with the nerve. You do not shout at the body. You turn to the knower and refuse to be its victim. You say within yourself, even if your voice is a whisper, I will not acknowledge a second power. I will not agree that law resides in matter. God alone is power. Then this is where we go next. You become still and listen. But first, see the logic. If the acceptance created your bondage, then presence, not a counter-acceptance, but presence realized, ends it. When the Father within announces himself as the only, the belief loses its root. You are no longer feeding it the breath of fear. Peace, be still. That word is not spoken to weather merely. It is spoken to the mental tempest that would persuade you that matter is cause and appearance is authority. Do not scold the body. The body is innocent. Do not scold climate or food. These are effects. They have no jurisdiction. Bring your attention home to the kingdom within where law originates. There, in the Holy of Holies of your own consciousness, you decide what you will recognize as power. There you choose whether to bow to the world belief or to stand in the one. When the one is realized, all that falls under your orbit takes on that coloration. The same draft that once frightened becomes a nothing. The same label that once sent you into a tremor becomes a word on paper. The same hour that once foretold trouble becomes just the next minute of God's day. If you will accept this, you will feel the pressure of the world belief begin to loosen. If you resist it, you will tighten the knot yourself. I will give you one more picture, and then we will move to the mechanism that makes all this practical. Think of a shadow on the wall, a grotesque shadow that appears when a lamp is placed at a certain angle. You can stand before the wall and beat the shadow with your fists. You can plead with it. You can call for help. You will grow tired, and the shadow will continue. What changes the shadow? You do not need to hire a stronger hand. You need only turn the lamp, change the light. The shape on the wall rearranges itself without being touched. That is what we are about. We are not giving you a stronger fist to beat shadows. We are asking you to turn the light of consciousness. We are asking you to see that the law is within, and that what you accept as power determines what shape the shadows take. So, remember the questions. Does the chest know a draft is harmful? No. Does the stomach know a label? No. Does the nerve own a clock? No. What does know it? I know it. And that is the secret. When you open that door, you stop honoring the appearance with power. You stop treating the symptom as though it were an authority to which you must respond. You turn to the only point of causation you ever had, your consciousness, and there you withdraw belief in a second power and invite the realization of the one. In a moment, we will see how that realization comes, not by talking, not by pushing truth at a condition, but by the silence that listens until presence announces itself. Then you will understand why, in the presence of God, error does not fight and lose. It cannot stand to be, and so it is not. Be still. That is the beginning of freedom. Refuse consent. That is your victory under pressure. Realize one. That is the law that ends the spell. Now we can say it without any frill. My only function is realization, not application, not manipulation, not the use of words to push on a condition. I do not know how to heal. Hear that? Do not try to correct me. Do not translate it into something kinder. I do not know how to heal. I do not know how disease is healed, how lack disappears, how sin cracks and falls away, how fear loses its tongue. I do not know, and I have no interest in learning how, because that would be the old game of two powers, learning how to take one so-called power and apply it to another so-called power, in the hope that ours is stronger. No, God is not a power over powers. God is, and when God is realized as the only, what never had power reveals itself as nothing. The work is realization. The result is dissolution. Let me repeat it because the mind slips back into its old habit and asks for a stronger remedy. There is no remedy in the infinite way. There is no application of God to a condition. You cannot apply spirit to matter the way you rub a salve on the skin. You cannot aim truth like a hose at a fire. I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father within me, he doeth the works. If the Father within doeth the works, then I do not. And if I do not, then my only function is to come to the Father within, to yield, to realize, to know in that inner way that is not thought but presence announcing itself. When that happens, however it happens, the error belief, which a moment before strutted with authority, quietly evaporates. No struggle, no pressure, no violence. It just is not. That word dissolves is accurate. Why? Because darkness does not have to be pushed out. You introduce light, and darkness does not argue and lose. It vanishes. It was never a thing with bulk and force. It was a way of seeing, a condition of absence, gone the instant the presence of light is present. So it is with fear, so it is with disease, so it is with lack, so it is with sin and false appetite, alcohol, nicotine, craving, lust, whatever mask it wears. In the realized presence, they do not line up to be whipped and conquered. They find nothing to feed on, and so they fade. This is why you will find, when the word of God stirs within, you breathe, sometimes only a breath, and there is a release, a soft assurance, all is well, and conditions that were hard as iron begin to be unimportant. Not because iron was bent, but because what looked like iron was mist, and mist does not survive the sun. This is not poetry, this is law. Not by might nor by power, but by my spirit, saith the Lord. Not a stronger might against a lesser might. Spirit realized. Grace, not force. The temptation will always be, always, to reach for a lever, to pull a cord, to recite more loudly, to plead more fervently, to fast an extra hour in the hope of impressing God. Do not do it. Never believe for a moment that you can bring forth a demonstration by applying truth to a problem. There are no problems in God. There is no truth to apply to a lie. There is only the realization of truth before which the lie cannot hold shape. If you can accept that, You are through with years of spiritual mechanics. Very well, you say, but what of the variety of troubles? Hear me now, because this is the mercy that simplifies your life. It is one and the self-same treatment for all categories: physical, mental, moral, financial, personal, domestic, national, relationship tangled, or body in pain, or business empty, or a son in prison, or a door closed in a foreign city. One treatment. Why? Because I only know one cause, God realized, and only one mischief, belief in two powers. If you had 10,000 different diseases, if you had 100 different sins, if you had losses of every shape and debts in every currency, they would still be different faces worn by the same misbelief. Therefore, you do not need a repertoire of specialized invocations, one for the stomach, one for the bank, one for the courts, one for the nerves. You need only realization. The presence realized meets each appearance exactly where it supposes itself to be and shows it up for what it is, nothing claiming to be something. I know this offends the mind that loves procedure. It wants charts and categories. It wants to say, for this affliction, this psalm, for that debt, that affirmation, for this habit, such and such a length of treatment. No. Put away childish things. There is only the Father within doeth the works. The same sun that melts ice on the river also dries the path and opens the bud. The sun does not consider a separate strategy for each object. It is what it is, and everything in its light is transfigured according to truth. So it is with realized presence. It requires no separate stratagem for arthritis, for fear of crowds, for a court summons, for a bitter tongue in your home. One light. Many shadows cleared, each in its way, without your human drafting of the cure. Now, if you will let that land, you will also see the necessary correction it makes to prayer. If my function is realization, I cannot be standing outside the temple shouting my needs through the door. I cannot be composing a speech to persuade God to be God. God is always God. God is always the only. Prayer, then, is not speech at all, except as a preliminary to still our scattered thought. Prayer is listening. Prayer is the deep interior consent to be still and to know. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. Heareth what? Heareth that gentle utterance, not in English and not in Hebrew, but in the language of assurance, in the feel of presence. Sometimes it will be a word, very soft. I am. Sometimes only a profound quiet that seems to say without words, I am on the field. And when that comes, you will notice there is no more desire to push on the condition. The desire goes because the necessity is gone. The thing that needed to be done is done. The light is on. Now the darkness conducts itself accordingly. You may ask, but if I do nothing to the problem, how does the problem change? You do nothing to the problem because there is nothing to be done to a shadow. You do everything necessary by realizing the light. Do not misunderstand me. Do not go out and break the windows to prove that drafts have no law. Do not test God with foolish stunts. That would be to remain in two powers and try to force a demonstration to satisfy human curiosity. I am not speaking of acts, I am speaking of causation. In the realm of cause, you have one work. Realize. Everything else is effect, and effects under the government of the one come into alignment without your human engineering. Let me make this simpler yet. Imagine a room full of children frightened by shapes on the wall. They wail, they cling to the teacher, they point, "Look, a monster!" Another. If the teacher joins the fight and swings at the wall, what happens? More fear, more frenzy. But if the teacher goes to the switch and turns on the light, what happens? Relief, laughter sometimes, embarrassment even. No apology is made to monsters. No apology is necessary. Nothing was offended because nothing was there. That is the dignity of spiritual healing. There is nothing to conquer. There is only something to see, and seeing, realizing, carries its own gentle, inevitable mathematical consequence. You will discover as you walk this that the sense of "I must fix it" begins to die. It dies not because you are lazy, but because you are honest. Of mine own self, I can do nothing. You come to love the word "nothing" there. It frees you from self-importance. It frees you from the panic of "what if I fail?" You cannot fail at what you are not doing. You can only fail to realize. And if you fail to realize today, you can return tomorrow and sit again, and not one atom of God's presence will be reduced by your yesterday. The sun does not scold the earth for the cloud that passed. It shines, that is all. Realization is like that. It does not strain, it does not sweat, it rests and knows. And in that rest, works appear, quietly, orderly, without trumpet. So let this sentence be engraved in you. You do not treat problems. You realize presence, and the false belief cannot survive that realization. If you forget everything else this hour, do not forget that. It will bring you through the night when symptoms shout and bank balances glare and old habits try to claim your name. Do not go to war, refuse consent. Turn to the within and wait until the hush speaks. In our very next step, we will take this from doctrine to practice. How to declare enough to center, and then to sit in that listening stillness until the gentle word moves in your consciousness. That is prayer. That is treatment. That is the only mechanism I know, and it is enough because God is enough. And for now, rest in the dignity of doing less and knowing more. Substitute grace for power. Let the Spirit do the works, and watch what happens to the shadows when you stop lending them your hand and start living in the light. Good. We come now to the part you can do, must do every day, every hour if need be. We move from the statement of law to the practice that allows the law to be felt in you. And let me say it plainly so that you do not wander in a circle. Prayer is not asking for a change. Prayer is not pleading for better weather in your affairs, better chemistry in your body, better conduct in your neighbor. Prayer is receptivity. Prayer is listening. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. That is prayer. If you will accept that, you will not waste years composing beautiful sentences to throw at conditions. You will retire to the altar within and wait until the word utters itself. Only God can utter the word. Only God's voice melts the earth. When that word moves, you will know it, not because something outside you shifts first, but because within you the argument goes still, the fight stops, and presence announces itself as the only. Now, because your mind has been trained in two powers, it will not sit down in pure silence at the first attempt. It will rush to recite, to reason, to persuade. So we give it one brief assignment, brief, to move it out of the way. Step 1, the declaration. Not a speech, a sentence or two, 3 at the most, that withdraws power from the appearance and restores it to the one. This is not an attempt to push truth into a condition. This is the centering of consciousness in principle. It might sound like this: God alone is power. Nothing that I can see, hear, taste, touch, or smell has power. The kingdom of God is within me. I take no thought for my life, for it is spirit. Or this: thou couldst have no power over me unless it came from God. One power, one presence, one life. That is enough. That is enough to stop the mind from running down the street after shadows. Do not embroider it. Do not argue it. Declare it and let it stand like a plumb line in your awareness. Then immediately, step 2. The listening. Sit down within. Become quiet, not by force. Do not clamp your jaw and try to blank the mind. That is muscle. That is the same old human will wearing a religious hat. You are not engineering a silence, you are consenting to it. You are refusing to follow thought streams. You are refusing to rehearse the symptom, the bill, the quarrel, and you are turning not outward to fix them, but inward to be addressed. Be still and know that I am God. You are not trying to create stillness. You are acknowledging that stillness is, and in that acknowledgement, you wait. 1 minute, 1.25, 1.5, 2 minutes if you can manage it. That is all. Do not take a stopwatch to the throne of God, but give yourself this small, exact obedience. Sit without words long enough for the argument to lose its hold. Sincerity, not strain, is your measure. If you only have 40 seconds of honest listening today, that is more prayer than 20 minutes of shouting truth at a condition. Now, because you will ask, how shall I know when prayer has taken place? I will tell you the signs that appear when the word begins to stir. They are small sometimes, so do not miss them. A deep breath that seems to come of itself, as if someone opened a window in a close room. A release. The chest, the face, the stomach lets go. A quiet sentence that you did not compose. All is well, or I am here, or God is on the field. Or no sentence at all, but a warmth, a weightlessness, a sense that the urgency has drained away and you can leave the matter alone. These are not to be sought as prizes. They are noticed as fruit. Do not try to manufacture a deep breath. Do not go hunting a phrase. Sit, and if it comes, it is God's word bearing witness in you. If it does not come in words, do not be disturbed. Sometimes the assurance is simply the absence of the clamor that was there a moment before. You look for the fear and cannot find it. That is prayer. What do you do with the thoughts that will come darting in? Memory, fear, body sensations, errands. You do nothing with them. You neither fight them nor follow them. If they tug at your sleeve, you may drop in a word from your declaration, one power, and then back to listening. If an argument rises, but what about? You answer once, I take no thought. And then you keep the appointment. Do not turn your prayer period into an arena where you wrestle every thought to the ground. The very wrestling is proof you are in two powers again. You are not defending God's honor. God requires no defense. You are simply refusing consent to the mind's leadership and receiving the leadership of the Spirit within you. Let me give you a simple pattern you can use. If you must have a pattern for the sake of beginning, find a chair. Sit with both feet on the floor. This is not magic. It is to keep the body quiet and cooperative. Close the eyes or lower them. Say quietly within, God alone is power. The kingdom of God is within me. I take no thought. Then be silent. Listen. If 30 seconds later the mind is shouting, let it shout as a child shouts beyond a closed door. You do not have to open the door. Give it a minute, 1.25, 1.5, 2 minutes if you can. If at any point a breath comes or a little word of assurance, notice it. Let it complete itself and do not grab at it. When you feel you have touched that quiet, even lightly, end there. Do not go on to see if you can extract a promise or nail down a result or get God to sign a contract. Leave the altar as you would leave a friend's home after a good visit, grateful, not grasping. You may say, is that enough? Surely I must do more. No, that is the temptation to go back to power thinking. Remember this as a law, not as a suggestion. Your work is not to push truth into a condition. Your work is to be still enough for truth to reveal itself. The moment you begin to push, you are confessing two powers. The moment you wait and listen, you are honoring one. Take no thought for your life, Jesus said. Why? Because the life is God's. It is the Father within that doeth the works. If the Father is the only worker, then your part is to be present to the worker. Presence meets presence there, and in that meeting the shadows do what shadows must do. Some of you will report that you sat, and in 1 minute, 1.25, all sense of strain went. The pain, the fear, the pressure had no voice. Others of you will say you sat and you were pestered by every stray thought in the county. Then what? Then you do not scold yourself. You do not decide that you failed. You sit again later. Early in the morning is good before the world's mesmerism frames your day in headlines of two powers. Sit then, even if only for 1 minute, and re-establish the plumb line. One power, one presence. Then you go about your day with that undertone, and you will be surprised how often, unbidden, the breath comes, the assurance returns, and you find you are living more from listening than from reacting. And if you are very honest, you will notice this: when you have truly listened, there is no more urge to treat the problem. The desire to tinker disappears. The mind has lost its job. You are content to let God be God. When the urge to go back and give it one more push arises, that is your signal that you have wandered from the altar back into the lobby of argument. Stop where you are, at your desk, in the kitchen, in the street, and take your 1-minute appointment. God alone is power. The kingdom is within. I take no thought. And then breathe and listen. If you are on a crowded train, the altar is there. If you are in a courtroom corridor, the altar is there. No one will know what is taking place, but you will know because the heavy harness slips off and the yoke becomes easy again. I will tell you a story to wash out the last trace of technique. A woman came and said, "I have treated this condition for hours and it grows worse." I asked, "For whom are you working?" She said, "For myself." I said, "That is why it is worse. You have been working for a self who has no power and no need of power. Be still. Let the word announce itself." She sat, and in less than 1 minute, a soft laugh came out of her. "It is nothing," she said. Not because the symptom vanished in that minute, but because the compulsion to prove something, to get something, broke. In the next hours, the shadow rearranged itself as it must, without her hand upon it. That is dignity. That is grace. Not by might nor by power, but by my spirit. Do not turn this into monasticism. You are not escaping from life. You are correcting your sense of causation in the midst of life. If you can give 5 of these short listening periods in a day, the tone of the day changes. If you can give 1 in the morning before you look at the world's news, you will notice that what once inflamed you now crosses your path like a stray cat. You see it and keep moving. If at noon you take another minute, you will return to your tasks with the sense that you are not the doer. The Father within is the doer, and you are the transparency. Work becomes lighter, relationships softer, the body less insistent. These are not ends. They are signs that you are living by a different law. Let me anticipate the moment that is coming, because it comes to all sincere students, and if you know it, you will not be surprised. You will be in your listening, and suddenly the symptom will shout. The thought will say, "Do something now. Say more truth. Say it louder. Get a stronger affirmation." That is the fork in the road. One path is force, 2 powers again. The other is the quiet yes to one power. In that instant, your victory is not to muster courage. Your victory is to refuse consent to the argument and return, even for 10 seconds, to inner listening. That is where we are going next. What to do under pressure. For now, remember, you cannot fail at something you are not doing. You are not healing anything. You are not applying a power. You are consenting to presence. When consent is true, the rest aligns under law. So make the practice simple, honest, brief, repeated. Declare enough to center. God alone is power. The kingdom is within. I take no thought. Then listen. 1 minute, 1 1/4, 1 1/2, 2 minutes if you can. Attend, not with your ears, but with your willingness. Notice the breath if it comes, the release if it comes, the soft all is well if it comes. And if nothing comes today, Come back tomorrow. The sun does not scold you, it shines. In that shine, the shadow has no life of its own, and what held you yesterday has nothing to hold on to today. That is prayer. That is treatment. That is the only doing asked of you, because it is not doing at all. It is letting. And in letting, grace governs. Now we come to the hour of testing, and I want you to recognize it when it appears so that you are not tricked by its noise. The pattern is always the same. The telephone rings, and it is bad news. The pain spikes at midnight. The bill arrives with red letters. The child cries with fever. The employer calls you in, and his face is set. In that instant, the human mind leaps to its feet and begins issuing commands. Do something. Do it now. Say more truth. Say it louder. Get a remedy. Call a friend. Prove a point. Take the wheel. That is the hypnosis. That is two powers speaking with urgency. And if you obey that voice, you will be at war with a ghost. The very rush, the very pressure to act, is the first sign that you have bestowed power on the appearance. Force is the confession of two powers. Freedom begins the moment you refuse the debate. Let us be very clear, because this is law. You do not battle a symptom. The moment you take up arms, you have granted the symptom a status it does not possess. You have elevated a shadow to opponent, and shadows, when fought, multiply. They grow with the energy you give them. Not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. Your victory in the instant of pressure is not force. It is non-consent. It is the quiet, deliberate refusal to accept the premise that there is a power apart from God to be met, matched, or overcome. It is the turning, immediate, simple, back to the one within. That turn is your whole salvation. What then do you do, practically, when the cry rises, when the mind shouts, now, now? You do exactly what we have been training for. Wherever you are, you drop a sentence that centers you. God alone is power. The kingdom of God is within me. I take no thought. Or, thou couldst have no power over me except it were given thee from above. One power, that much, no more speech. Then you close the inner lips and listen. 1 minute, 1 1/4, 1 1/2, 2 minutes if you can manage it. You listen for the hush, for the deepening, for the release, for the unurgency. If in that minute fear claws up the throat, if the body jerks, if thought hammers, do not scold yourself. Do not say, I failed. That too is two powers. Simply declare once more one power and go back again to listening, again and again and again if necessary. Each return is a withdrawal of consent from the lie. Each return is a re-anchoring in principle. You are not wrestling the condition. You are training attention to be faithful to the real. Do not mistake this for passivity. It is not resignation to evil. It is refusal to dignify evil as a power. There is all the difference in the world. When you refuse consent to a forgery, you are not passive toward crime. You are loyal to law. When a judge sets aside a false document, he does not argue with ink. He recognizes no authority in it. So it is here. We are not lying down under trouble. We are standing up in the one. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. Stand still does not mean do nothing out of fear. It means do not move from the consciousness of one power. That stillness is authority, not apathy. Here is how you discern in the midst. If in your listening there comes that sweet sense of release, a breath you did not arrange, a warmth, a little sentence, all is well, or simply the draining away of compulsion, then you are through for now. Get up. Go about your task. Do not peek around the corner to see if the symptoms saluted. Leave it. The work was inner. The effect will follow under law. If, on the other hand, you rise and find agitation still cracking like static in you, Do not push forward into action on that basis. That is when mistakes are made. Words are said that cannot be unsaid. Remedies are chosen that are bargains with fear. No. Return. Even for 30 seconds in a washroom, in a corridor, at a desk with your eyes lowered. God alone is power. The kingdom is within. I take no thought. Then listen. Your object is not to produce a thrill. Your object is to abide, to be steady enough that the realized presence can register. This trains consciousness, not emotions. Emotion will run hot and cold. Consciousness, once anchored, holds. There will be times, mark this, when the shout comes in waves. You sit and are still, and 5 minutes later, the mind is back with the old demand, do something. Each time you repeat the simple loop, declaration to center, silence to receive. 10 seconds if that is all you have. 1 minute if you can. Those little obediences multiplied break the back of the hypnosis. The world mind counts on your fatigue. It counts on you feeling foolish and giving up. It counts on you saying, prayer did nothing, I must take this into my own hands. Do not grant it that pleasure. The human scene may thrash for a while as the current changes, but the current is changing. You will notice, sometimes in a day, sometimes in a week, that the urgency which strutted like a general now mutters like a clerk. The voice loses authority. That is healing. That is the belief dissolving. The effect on the body or the bank or the relationship adjusts in its right sequence, but the reality of healing is the evaporation of consent to two powers. I have had students call and say, I prayed and it got worse. I answer, good. You have flushed the enemy into the open, not an enemy outside, but the belief within that still demanded a fight. Now do not run after it. Keep your appointment again. Remember our mathematical formula. Demonstration is proportionate to consciousness. You cannot get away from it. The degree to which you can be still, the degree to which you can refuse the bait and rest in one, is the degree to which the appearance loses its seeming. No human storm can outshout the word when it is realized. But the word is not realized by sprinting after it with slogans. It is realized by sitting, by listening, by consent. Let me address another subtle trick that comes under pressure. Bargaining. If I can be very quiet for 2 minutes, maybe the pain will subside. Maybe the boss will change his mind. That is not prayer. That is a transaction. It leaves you in two powers, your quietness as a tool, the condition as a power to be moved. Drop it. Your silence is not payment. It is obedience to reality. You are silent because God is. You listen because the word is the only voice. When that is true, you will sometimes find that you completely forget to check the symptom. Hours pass, and then you notice, oh, it is gone, or it is unimportant, or the call came and the matter was settled. That forgetting is a beautiful sign. The center held. The periphery took care of itself. Someone will ask, but suppose action is required. Call a doctor, make a decision, sign a paper. Then what? The same law applies. Act out from the inner release, not into the agitation. If after your listening there is a clear, unhurried direction, do this, call there, then do it as the transparency for the Father within. I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father within me, he doeth the works. Then the phone call is not a human throw of the dice. It is obedience to a quiet guidance. If there is no release, wait. Even 5 minutes of delay to re-establish the one can save you from 5 months of repairing a choice made in fear. This is not superstition, this is law. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. Now you see why I told you earlier that this must be repeated, gently, faithfully, almost monotonously, because the pressure that demands you forget is not your private invention. It is the world mesmerism, the universal belief in two powers, that beats at the door of everyone's consciousness, morning, noon, and night. Headlines, conversations, family histories, personal memories, aches, bank rates, they all sing the same song. There are many powers. Hurry, defend yourself. Get a bigger club. And if you listen to that chorus at breakfast, you will spend your day in reaction, using truth as a weapon and wondering why you are tired by noon. Therefore, our practice under pressure is not an emergency measure. It is a way of life. We refuse the argument not once, but as a rhythm of being. We return to quietness not as a last resort, but as the first movement of every hour. We are coming in our next step to the discipline that makes this steadiness natural, the daily protection, preferably in the morning, that substitutes grace for power before the world has its say. If you will meet the day with one power established, you will find that when the symptom shouts later, it sounds like a memory of thunder, not a present storm. But for now, take this with you. In the moment of pressure, your triumph is this simple refusal, no consent to a second power, and this simple obedience. Return to inner listening. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. Then let the hush do what hush always does. It reveals the presence that was never absent, and in that presence, the shadow has no stage on which to perform. Be still, be still, be still, and you will know. Good. We have spoken of the battle cries and how to refuse them. Now we must set in place the protection that keeps you from living by alarms at all. This is preventative, not dramatic. It is simple and it is daily, preferably early, before the world knocks, before the headlines, before the messages, before the body tells you its story. You must establish the government of your day. If you do not, the day will establish its government over you, and you will spend your hours unhooking yourself from its edicts. Each day, without exception, the mesmerism of the world presents itself. Fear in the news, medical prophecy dressed as certainty, economic prophecy dressed as wisdom, the family narrative that says, "In our line we always," the statistics that demand reverence, the memory that whispers, "This happened before, it will happen again." All of this is one thing, the universal belief in two powers. If you start your day as a blank slate, that belief will write on you. If you start your day with one power realized, the chalk breaks in its hand. So, the practice, preferably early, even before you put your feet on the floor, realize, this is God's day. That is not a sentiment, that is jurisdiction. This is the day which the Lord hath made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. Why rejoice? Because if God made the day, God is the law of the day, the life of the day, the substance and activity of the day. No other power has entree. Say it within, quietly, and mean it. This is God's day. Then fix in consciousness your foundation stones. Briefly, clearly, God alone is power. There are not two powers. Nothing that I can see, hear, taste, touch, or smell is power. All power is invisible, spiritual, and present. The kingdom of God is within me. I take no thought. Thou couldst have no power over me except it were given thee from above. Not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit, one power, one presence, one life. Then be still. 1 minute, 1 1/4, 1 1/2. 2 minutes, if you can. Let the word, if it will, brush your cheek like a wind. Let the breath come if it comes. If not, do not manufacture it. You are not praying to get. You are consecrating to be governed. Now let me give you the key that turns the lock for the whole day. Substitute the word grace for the word power. Give up the idea of power, your power, their power, medicine power, money power, weather power, and substitute the word grace. Grace is not a force you wield. Grace is the nature of God revealing itself as sufficiency, harmony, order. When you awake and feel the mind begin to reach for levers, how will I manage? How will I fix? How will I prevent? Cut the cord, not by might nor by power, but by my spirit. Today I live by grace. Practice this substitution on purpose, in your speech, in your thought. Wherever the old habit says, I need more power, answer, I need only grace. Grace is present. Wherever the news says, this danger has great power, answer, it has no power. God alone is power, and God expresses as grace. That one exchange, repeated, dissolves hours of effort you would otherwise waste arming yourself against phantoms. Do not minimize the influence that seeks you each morning. The body awakens with sensations. The mind awakens with yesterday's weather. The radio awakens with someone's anxiety packaged as information. The world mind begins tutoring at dawn. Protect yourself. Hurry. Compete. Avoid. Attack. If you let that tape play unchallenged at breakfast, by noon you will be exhausted from the strain of living, as if you are a lonely power station trying to light a city. But if, before you ever greet the world, you have greeted the kingdom within, something else happens. You find yourself less reactive. You do not snap at the first ripple. You do not believe the first rumor in your nerves. You watch, you listen, and you answer from quiet. Fear has fewer doors into you. Discords come looking for agreement and find none. They wander on. You are not trying to control life. You are letting life, which is God, express itself from within you without your tinkering. That is protection. I will be exact because exactness is kindness. Set a simple morning order that you can keep. Before coffee, before paper, before screens, sit. 2 minutes will do if 2 minutes are all you will do. 3 or 4 if you can. Do not announce to yourself a new heroic discipline that will last 2 days and then fail. Begin where obedience can be continuous. Say within, slowly, clearly, this is God's day. God alone is power. The kingdom is within me. I take no thought. Substitute grace for power. Then be silent and listen. Do not review your schedule in prayer. Do not rehearse yesterday's hurts. Do not plan. Listening is your plan. If a deep breath comes, notice it. If a thought comes, all is well. Notice it. Then rise and dress and eat in that undertone. If you forget and the mind begins to buzz, stop at the sink, 10 seconds, and recenter. One power, grace, not power. Then go on. This is not superstition. This is law. Your day will be built in the image of your governing consciousness. Demonstration is proportionate to consciousness. You cannot get away from it. You may protest, but what about the realities of the world? Illness statistics, economic cycles, political tumults. I answer you from the same law every time. Nothing you can see, hear, taste, touch, or smell is power. All power is invisible. When you substitute grace for power, you are not denying appearances. You are denying them authority. You are refusing to be instructed by the senses as if they were gods. You are choosing to be instructed by the Spirit. Take no thought for your life, not because you are irresponsible, but because life is not sustained by thought. It is sustained by God. Then, from that place, you handle your duties better than before. You make the phone call with clarity. You keep the appointment without agitation. You consult a professional without fear and without surrendering your center. You are not a reed shaken by every wind because your root is in the unseen. There is a beautiful payoff, but be careful not to chase it as a prize. The payoff is this steady tone. Less reaction, less fear, fewer discords accepted at the door. Things that used to inflame you now pass like weather. The inner climate does not change with every cloud. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. And because you are no longer living by struggle, the body reflects that ease. The mind reflects that order. Relationships reflect that gentleness. You do not make these effects, you witness them. They are the natural outflow of realized presence. Healing, then, is no longer an occasional miracle you try to extract. When matters get bad, Healing becomes the unforced byproduct of the one realized and the two denied, again and again in the morning and as needed through the day. Let me anticipate the objection that comes to students who love achievement. Isn't this too simple? Shouldn't I add more study, more technique, more statements? No. Simplicity is the power because simplicity keeps you out of power thinking. Say little. Mean much. Keep the appointment. Every morning put the stamp on the day, God's day, one power, grace, not power. Then listen, then rise and live from that center. If you will keep this gently and faithfully, you will find that your days begin to settle. The undertow that used to grab your ankles is not there. The universal mind has not stopped speaking. It has lost your ear. You have learned the voice of the shepherd, and the sheep know his voice, and a stranger they will not follow. Make it practical in your house. Put a small card by your bed. Grace, not power. Put another by your breakfast place. This is God's day. When the hand reaches for the phone in the morning, let the eye catch the card first. When the mind reaches for worry, let the word grace come first. These are not charms, they are reminders of law. The law is always the same. One power, no other. You are not making it true. You are consenting to its truth. Consent is everything. In consenting each morning, you alter the axis of your life, from outside in to inside out. The kingdom within becomes your home base, not your weekend cottage. And this carries us to our closing movement, where all of this is not practice only, but life, where you discover that freedom is not achieved by overpowering life. It is lived by resting in the kingdom within, until the belief in two powers dissolves of itself. From there, works appear without will, answers arise without argument, and you walk through your day as transparency, not as warrior. But before we go there, promise me this one small obedience. Tomorrow morning, preferably early, say, "This is God's day." Declare one power. Substitute grace for power. Be still, 1 minute, 1.25, 1.5, 2 minutes if you can. Then watch, not to be impressed by effects, but to see how naturally the day follows the government you have established. That is protection, that is prevention, that is living by grace. Now we come to the point toward which everything has been moving. The place where practice is not emergency equipment and prayer is not an argument, but a way of being. You have tasted the futility of the old way, technique upon technique, force upon force, a louder voice to shout down a louder fear, and you have felt the fatigue of it. Be honest. Fighting wears you out because fighting assumes two powers and calls upon you to be the deciding muscle. Realization, by contrast, rests you because realization assumes one power and calls upon you only to consent. Be still ceases to be poetry pinned to a framed page and becomes functional law. You stop treating symptoms, you stop addressing conditions as if they were powers, and you sit in quiet until the hypnosis clears and there remains only God, present, governing, enough. This is not philosophy for a salon. This is a mathematical formula. You cannot get away from it. Demonstration follows consciousness as effect follows cause. When the altitude of consciousness rises, when the belief in two powers loosens and the realized presence stands in you as your normal, your days, your body, your affairs, your relationships show it, not by luck, not by divine favoritism, by law. The degree of the works you witness will always be directly proportionate to your state of consciousness. If you attempt to outperform your realized state, if, under the spell of urgency, you borrow slogans and throw them like stones, you will tire and call it a hard day. If you quietly insist upon one and refuse consent to a second, you will find that even hard days have no jurisdiction. The scene may still present itself, but it does not govern you, and therefore it does not endure. Do not forget, this is universal. It is one and the self-same treatment for the entire catalog of troubles the human scene can invent. Whether the appearance calls itself pain, lack, resentment, a knot in the heart called loneliness, a knot in the stomach called dread, whether it advertises as a chronic diagnosis or as a sudden alarm, the remedy is not tailored to the costume. The remedy is realization. My only function is realization. I do not know how disease is healed. I do not know how to make money appear, or to mend a quarrel, or to change a face at a desk. I know one thing. In the realized presence of God, the belief in a second power cannot live. It dissolves of its own nothingness, just as darkness dissolves in the presence of light. Nothing is applied to darkness. You do not rub light on it, or reason with it, or fight it. You turn on the light, and the rest is inevitable. And so the kingdom within ceases to be an idea and becomes your address. You are no longer a traveler who visits the sanctuary when storms arise. You are at home, and you leave home only to find that everywhere you step is home. Works without will appear from that place, because the doer of the work is not your human cleverness. I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father within me, he doeth the works. From that acknowledgement arise actions that are clean, unforced, timely. You speak when there is a word to speak, and your word does not have the flavor of self-defense. You move when there is a movement to make, and your movement does not carry the weight of anxiety. Answers rise in the quiet, not because you have demanded them, but because answers are native to the presence that is answering itself in you. Let us, here and now, seal this not as concept, but as felt experience. We will do together what I have asked you to do each morning. Close the inner door. Forget me. Forget the room. Forget the next thing to do. Say within, once, simply, God alone is power. The kingdom of God is within me. I take no thought, not by might, nor by power, but by thy Spirit. Then be still. 1 minute, 1 1/4, 1 1/2, 2 minutes if you can. You are not manufacturing a mood. You are not listening for a sentence. You are consenting to the word, if it will speak, and if it does not speak, you are consenting to its silence. If a deep breath comes, notice it. If a little warmth spreads, notice it. If nothing sensible happens, notice that you are not under orders to produce. Your sole function is to be still enough that if the voice utters, you have ears. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. Do that now as you will do tomorrow morning, and as you will do in the hallway when the phone rings with news, and as you will do in the night when a thought pretends it is a power. The one you touch in that minute is the government of your whole day. The fruit of this is not a parade of proofs to show your neighbors. The fruit is a settled life. The undertone of fear ebbs. The need to press, to win, to fix, to earn your safety by argument loosens. You find the body cooperating with quietness, not dictating it. You find obligations simplified, not multiplied, because you are not adding your will to every task. You begin to notice that the things you were chasing come unforced when you are not chasing, and the things you were dreading do not arrive when you are not advertising a vacancy for them. Freedom, as I have told you and tell you again, is not achieved by overpowering life. Freedom is lived by resting in the kingdom within until the belief in two powers dissolves. When it dissolves, the show of trouble has no actor left to play it. The stage is occupied. God is on the field. Carry therefore this simple order as your send-off. Do it daily and do it in the moment. In the morning, establish jurisdiction. This is God's day, one power. Grace, not power. Then listen. During the day, when the old habit knocks, refuse the debate with a brief truth. Then listen. 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 1 minute. Not to get a result, not to wiggle the condition as if it were a lever, but to live in the realized presence. Results will follow under law because they must. You cannot get away from it. Consciousness determines demonstration as surely as light determines whether darkness seems to be there. Do not try to do God's part. Do yours. Be still. Consent. Listen. I will leave you with the anchor you can feel in your bones. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. Not in cleverness, not in pressure, in quietness and in confidence. Confidence in what? In the one that is already within you, that never leaves, that needs no defense, that needs only to be realized. So go in that quiet. Keep the appointment 1 minute, 1.25, 1.5, 2 minutes if you can. And walk as transparency, not as warrior. The kingdom is within you. The Father within you doeth the works. Be still and know that I am God. And let the word, when it will, be heard within. Then let the day reveal how naturally a life governed by grace lives itself.